All right, hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar, ACRAO's relationship with state and regional organizations. Our presenters today are Jack Miner from The Ohio State University. He's the University Registrar and Director of it's the Executive Director of Enrollment Services, I believe. And then he's also the President-elect of ACRAO. And then we have Jerry Montag, is the University Registrar at Northern Illinois University, and he is the Vice President for Leadership and Management Development at ACRAO, and I'm sure many of you have conversed with both of these individuals on a number of occasions, but in case you haven't, that's who they are. On this webinar today, we'll be going through the whole thing. It should probably not take a full hour, but we have blocked off the full block or hour block in case there are questions that you want to get answered there. And if you need to ask those questions at the end, I will unmute individuals who have used the hand raise function, and I'll just individually call you out when I've unmuted you, and you could ask those either directly over whatever audio device that you use to join, or you can just type them out in the questions tab. So without further ado, I'll hand it off to Jack Miner.
Great. Thanks a lot, Mike. So a lot of you probably know me. Somewhere along the way, again, I'm University Registrar at The Ohio State University and also the President-elect of ACRAO. Jerry, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
I'm going to just introduce, I'm Jerry Montag. I've been a part of this organization for so many years, and I'm so glad we're having this type of discussion today and to see what more ACRAO could do with our state and regionals. I'm also going to sit in the back seat and let Jack be in the front seat. So I'm going to black out my video and Jack could do the talking. See ya.
So a little bit about why the two of us are doing this. Jerry obviously makes a lot of sense because he's the person who is regularly in contact with you, is really the board's liaison to all the state and regionals. But this started for me actually as part of our conversation when I was still Vice President for Finance. So again, still makes a lot of sense because of being President-elect, but the background really was around finance. When we started thinking about what our relationship was with state and regionals, we started to really think about a number of things. And some of them really ended up involving finance and involved our budget. So that was why I ended up becoming pretty involved in this. So the background of how we got to where we are and how we got to the proposed version of moving forward with relationships was ACRAO's board has for the last couple of years talked about how we wanted to do a better job of engaging all of our members and especially our state and regional organizations. As we started thinking about how we wanted to do that and started talking to a lot of the state and regionals, over and over we were hearing people say that what they really needed from ACRAO was support around some of the infrastructure services. So advice on how to set themselves up as a 501c3. I was regularly giving advice to folks on how to work with their state or regional budget or how to do things around tax filings. And one of the other things that we really started to hear was that some of the groups were really struggling with infrastructure things like technology, like database management, like websites, and really approached ACRAO about wanting to provide some of those services. And so we did a pilot, as many of you know, there's probably a couple of you out there who were actually part of our pilot, but we did a pilot over the last year or so where we started offering MemberClicks at a free rate to some of the state and regionals to really work out the kinks of how could we build state and regionals into the contract that ACRAO has. ACRAO had started working with MemberClicks a few years ago, and one of the things that they had said to us pretty early in that conversation was, if you wanted to involve the state and regionals, we could set them up in a way that would allow them to essentially be part of our contract, but pay on their own. We could think about discounting as well because of the volume. And so it really became a great connection. One of the things that some folks have asked is when we think about that, that database support, is MemberClicks the only option? And the answer is yes right now. That may be something that as we start to see what the interest is and we start to get more involvement, we'll start to see if there's other products that we want to support. One of the things that was a realization for all of us on the board and a realization for a lot of the state and regionals was that currently no affiliation exists. So everybody calls themselves an ACRAO affiliate, or everyone calls themselves a state and regional group for ACRAO. But honestly, all of us are operating completely separately and don't really have a connection. So one of the things we wanted to do with this partnership and affiliation was to create a little bit more structure where it wasn't a central organization or the national organization really kind of laying down rules or anything like that. It was really more of a case of, let's formalize what that connection is. And one of the really easy ones that I think people can understand is we want to be able to say that, yes, this group is perfectly fine using the ACRAO logo. And yes, this group is perfectly fine for us to link to from the website. But where do we stop that? So if it's an ACRAO affiliated group, that makes a lot of sense, but we could have easily had NACAC groups, for-profit groups, individual training groups, test groups. You know, you can see how a lot of corporate groups would want to say, oh, we want to do something that's an ACRAO affiliation too, and how do we distinguish between our affiliated state and regional groups and what those are? So this really gave us a great opportunity to do that. So what we've started creating is a model that would be that would give folks an opportunity to choose between either an ACRAO affiliation or an ACRAO partnership. And sorry, but my slides are updating a little slow, so let me catch them up. There. So the affiliate level is kind of the base level of connection to ACRAO. And the concept with that one is if an organization feels like they don't want to create a really strong partnership, they're not really looking for any of the support services that ACRAO is providing, and they really just want that minimal level of connection, that gave an opportunity to do that in a way that we felt like was really not threatening. And by the not threatening, what that ends up translating to is when we looked at the profile of most of the state and regionals that we work with, almost all of them were meeting most of the things that we have in the ACRAO affiliate list of expectations. And most of them were already getting the benefits that we were giving away in the ACRAO affiliate. So it was kind of that like-to-like, apples-to-apples comparison. With the ACRAO partnership, and frankly, I think most organizations are going to end up deciding that they want to do the partnership level. With the partnership level, you get a little bit of an extended connection to ACRAO. It includes a few more benefits, and frankly, the benefits that I think folks have been asking for a lot more often that we aren't currently giving, but it also has a little bit more responsibility. I would call the things that are connected with the ACRAO affiliate really kind of good government types of things. So the types of things that if you're running a nonprofit organization, even if it's a small organization, you should really be doing those things anyway. When I think about the partnership, it ratchets that up a little bit and starts to think about how does ACRAO and the state and regional organizations start to share information. So in that model, in the ACRAO partnership model, there's an opportunity for ACRAO to start sending you content that you can include in your newsletters. There's a hope that you'll include information in our newsletters or in other publications. And then again, the thing that I think is the big draw for folks is it gives an opportunity for MemberClicks. And then with that, I think you'll end up seeing that there's some really good things that come from that with partnerships. So kind of in looking at those, I wanted to cover what was the same about the affiliation and partnership model, and then a little bit about what's different. So when you think about what's the same, we have an expectation that any of the folks in the affiliate or the partnership model would be independently incorporated within their home state. And that's something that, again, as far as we know, everyone or almost everyone already is. that everybody would have an independent 501c3 status or something like that. There's some groups that have, for whatever reason, usually based on something about their own state or based on something about the way that group is organized historically, they've done a different IRS affiliation than 501c3. And again, that's perfectly fine. It's just making sure that you're essentially doing what you should be doing from a federal government standpoint in the same way that you're doing what you should be doing from a state government standpoint. In those two cases, most of what's happening with that is you're providing protections for the organization, for your state and regional organization, and providing protections for the board members. So again, most groups have either already done that or have reached out to us to say that was something they were interested in doing as well. The next piece that we expect of both the affiliate and partnership level is to have a set of bylaws that are periodically reviewed. Again, most of you or almost all of you are already doing that. Some of the new things that some groups may not be doing, but again, we identified in working with state and regionals as something that was aspirational for the groups that didn't already have it, and was something that was, again, in that category of the right thing to do or the right thing to have, was to establish a non-discrimination statement that's approved by your membership. And again, every organization is going to be different. In some cases, that's approved by the full membership and somebody will incorporate that into their bylaws. In other cases, it will be something that the board approves as an independent statement. And again, that model is completely up to whatever's right for the state and regional. Additionally, is an expectation that you do some type of annual audit of your finances. And again, that also is one of those good government types of things that you would expect any nonprofit organization of any size to do. We also left that open. So it has no expectation at all that you have an audit firm do that. ACRAO actually hires a firm for ourselves every year, but that's really more because of the size of our budget. If somebody has a $60,000 or $70,000 operating budget on a state and regional level, it doesn't make sense for you to hire somebody to do that audit necessarily. In most cases, it's a membership committee that's made up of some board members as well as some non-board members from the membership that does an annual audit of the books of the organization. So again, that's an opportunity for each area or each state and regional to think about what's right for them. When we think about that next level of affiliation or partnership with ACRAO, and that really is the partnership model where you have a little bit more expectations. One of those is that you'll annually share the membership list with ACRAO. There's a little bit of a background on that. Partially, that's an opportunity for us to think about how do we have a broader reach. If you think about it, many of our schools have 2 to 4 members that are voting members on ACRAO, and that may be the only people we have contact with. So this is an opportunity for us to have a broader population of people that we can market the conference to, as well as market publications to. Again, that's one that will be extremely limited and conservative on what marketing we do around that, and probably only use those lists a couple of times a year, but it was an opportunity to be able to broaden that. The practical reason, and this is the one that I think is really important, is because we are sharing one database, because of the MemberClicks contract, we kind of already would have had your membership list. So this was an opportunity for us to be affirmative and say, hey, as a heads up, because you're adding yourself onto our MemberClicks contract, we would have arguably had access to your database. So we want to make sure that we're really upfront and make sure that people realize that. The next piece would be to provide 1 article per year for an ACRAO publication and newsletter. We left that really open as well. So that could be a case where you're doing an update of a program that your state and regional is doing. It could also be something where you had a really phenomenal session at one of your state and regional conferences, and you encourage that person to do research around that to submit to CNU, or to do a short newsletter article that we put in transcript. It really provides you an opportunity to think about what's the right answer for that and to really make that connection. The goal of that is for people across the country and for ACRAO members across the country to get exposed to information that they wouldn't normally get exposed to. So that concept that you may have had a great session at your state or regional conference, but that person's never going to be able to afford to go to the ACRAO meeting. How can we get the information from that session that happened in your state to the rest of the ACRAO members? And this was a way to do that. Similarly, we'll be pushing information out from the ACRAO office that you can provide, that you can put into your state and regional newsletter if you have one. In some cases, it could be something that we just ask that you push out to your membership. That will be one of the ways that we control that we're not kind of spamming your members all of the time with information, that we're trying to be really conservative about when we use that mailing list and to give you a little bit more control over what things you share. A lot of those will be legislative updates, and a lot of those will be some call to actions like we've been doing with the Government Relations Committee over the last year or so. When we think about the benefits that come along with this, again, same model. There's some of the benefits that are the same and some that are ratcheted up for the partners. Those that are the same is, again, it gives everyone the authority to use the ACRAO name and marks. We give you a direct link to your state and regional group from the ACRAO website. And then we market your events as part of the annual meeting. So if you think back to the app, if you think back to the program book, we normally put the state and regional events that are happening at the annual meeting. Most of you do dinners or a cocktail hour. We put those in the program book. We'll continue to do that. So again, in most cases, these were things that ACRAO was already doing for the state and regionals, and it kind of codifies that. The next ones are similar. So again, things that are the same, and it's again codifying some of the things that we've been doing. The first one is an invitation to the leadership meeting every year. Many or most of you know that that's coming up in June, and we do a track for that specifically for state and regional leaders. That's an opportunity for you not to just learn from other people, but to also help shape the future of what ACRAO looks like. We'll continue to invite folks to the state and regional workshop that we have prior to the annual meeting. That usually happens on the Sunday of the annual meeting. And again, that's a great opportunity to share information, and we'll continue to sponsor that, and this codifies that. And then we'll also do free webinars through the year. One of the things that as we started to reflect about the support that the state and regionals were looking for, a lot of those were things like, how do we run an organization? What are best practices for hosting our annual meeting? What are some things we can do to leverage free or cheap technology that are available in an open source environment? What are some of the budget opportunities that we can do? And what are the ideas that we can share across state lines or across regional lines? So we'll begin doing a lot more webinars around those areas that will give groups an opportunity to learn from each other, and also bring in experts to allow you to learn from them as well. We'll continue to do best practice and training materials through the year. Many of you know that we're working on a publication about running state and regional organizations, and that will be something made available to the groups that are affiliates as well as partners. One of the things I want to call out specifically though on the training is some groups have said, we are incorporated in our state, but we are not yet a 501c3, or we are a different IRS designation because that was something we did 15 or 20 years ago before we thought it made sense to be 501c3, but we'd like to make that change. So we intend to offer training around that, and also offer a little bit of advisement. So when we think about the standards that somebody needs to meet, or the expectations that somebody needs to meet to be able to become an affiliate or a partner with ACRAO, our hope is that we would essentially hold your hand and kind of walk you through any of the ones that you feel like were difficult that you needed to get to. Because once you establish those, all of those were generally meant to be something that once you established them once, you didn't have to go back and do that over and over. You're doing annual audits, you're doing updates to your bylaws on a periodic basis, but it's not something where you need to prove things to us over and over and over. So getting through this first batch of folks joining is really that first opportunity. When we think about what's the same and what's different, and this is kind of labeled what's the same, but I'll talk about what's different about it. So if somebody joins as just an affiliate, so that's kind of the lower level of engagement, we would send an ACRAO board member or staff member to attend your state or regional meeting every 3 years. I'll talk about what's different about that in a second for the partners, and it's basically a little bit more often. So when we think about the additional benefits for partners, so again, that's that second group that is a stronger connection to ACRAO. The big one that most folks have been interested in is the connection with MemberClicks. So you would receive a 25% discount for a single instance of MemberClicks. You would receive $1,000 credit from ACRAO for that, and that was something that if you were at the ACRAO annual meeting, you heard us approve that in the budget for this year. So we've set aside funds for that. You'd also be able to use ACRAO conference call tools, as well as ACRAO will host up to 2 listservs per organization. So again, some of the things that from a technical standpoint, you wouldn't have been able to easily support yourselves. In many cases, folks have said that these are things that are being hosted by a member institution within a state or within a region, and it's really hard to manage that on an ongoing basis as board members change, and you may lose that connection with that institution, or the institution may change their technology, and all of a sudden you lose conference call features, or you lose the opportunity to host a mailing list. So we want to be able to provide that. Going back again to the opportunity for partners around the board and staff member visit, when we think about that partner level, and this is again a big distinction, we would be available to visit every year for the folks that are partners. For the affiliates, again, it would be once every 3 years, but then for the partners, it would be every year. So a little bit about next steps. The next step will happen is tomorrow. You'll receive an email from Mike Sisson that's a follow-up to this webinar, and it will provide a written version of the document. You also, if you look in the handouts portion of the webinar screen, you'll be able to see that there's a version of this there if you wanted to see the details and talk about it with your own board. But we'll reach out to you tomorrow to say, here's a copy of the agreement form. And then each state and regional can start to have internal conversations about which one is the right model for them. If you have questions, feel free to reach out at any time and talk to me and Jerry. We're happy to meet with your board, or happy to do a conference call with your board to think about what's right for your individual group. And then each individual group will sign the agreement and return it back to ACRAO. And then we'll begin coordinating each of those pieces. So the biggest one is we'll start coordinating what those MemberClick relationships are, and start connecting you with the vendor to be able to set up the instance at your own state and regional. This will renew these every 5 years. But one of the things that we wanted to provide as flexibility was an opportunity that a state or regional group could choose to change their affiliation with us at any time. So for example, if the board says this year that you want to sign up as an affiliate with ACRAO, but 6 months later or 9 months later, something happens, it'll most likely be something happens around the technology standpoint, or you start to realize that you wanted somebody for your local ACRAO annual meeting, and you can only have somebody every 3 years, you really want them every year from the board, you can change your mind and say, oh, we signed up as an affiliate, but we want to change that to being a partner instead. And what we would do at that point is basically make sure that you've met all the expectations, or can meet all the expectations of the partner level, and then we'll start bringing out those benefits that come at the partner level. So again, you can move back and forth within reason, obviously, but you can move back and forth as you go through the year, especially as we try to level set this and as everybody gets used to it. So then the next thing we'll do is once we've started that partnership, we'll really start collecting the documentation. And this is twofold. One, it's to make sure that you really do have bylaws and that you didn't just say, yeah, sure, we've got bylaws. But the other thing is to provide an opportunity to create a resource file. One of the things that state and regionals have all been asking for is how does another state do this? Or how does another state or region do this? And we wanted to be able to provide a base level of documents and start to change the culture. We feel like if we provide a resource area that these materials are available and we give this base level of bylaws, articles of incorporation, non-discrimination statements, things like that, it will hopefully prompt some state and regionals to think about, oh, we're doing a really great job of this thing. So we have a really great scholarship committee, or we have a really great service program, or we have a really great college fair program. I'm going to publish the information about that on ACRAO's site and share it with the other state and regionals. So again, it goes back to that mission of sharing information, but it also goes back to that mission of creating a stronger bond between all of the groups. And again, we'll continue to work with you to fill in any of the gaps. So if you feel like you need help developing any of those policies, we'll work with you to do that. And then on an ongoing basis, we'll continue to check in with you, kind of in a similar way to Jerry Montag's role, checking in with you each year to say, hey, who would you like to come to the ACRAO, to your state or regional ACRAO meeting, and what would you like them to do once they get there? That will still continue. The cadence will depend on whether or not you're an affiliate or a partner. And then separate from that, the ACRAO office will reach out, and the new content coordinator roles especially will reach out and start to say things like, hey, let us know if you have any newsletter articles or any great presentations that you'd like somebody to write up that we can include in an ACRAO publication or in an ACRAO newsletter. So again, it really starts to form that bond and that ongoing relationship between ACRAO board, ACRAO office, and the state and regionals. So that was a lot of information. I know some of you have listened or attended something that Jerry and I have done before around this topic, and we're really just kind of hearing one more version. And for some of you, I know this was the first time you've really heard us talk through this. So with that, I want to open it up for questions. And again, you can raise your hand and Mike Sisson will open it up to you to be able to ask that question. You can also type a message in the chat box if you're not comfortable speaking, and we'll read those and answer those as well. So thanks.
All right, thanks, Jack. And we do have a few written questions, but now I'll get to those first before I go through and get to the attendees who have their hands raised, of which I see actually none. So I guess that doesn't really matter anyway. So Seth asked, yeah,
to do that.
Yep. So Seth came and asked if we have already signed our contract with MemberClicks for this year, and they signed specifically in April. Can the discount and or credit still apply if they sign up for this partner program with us?
So we'll have to work with you one-on-one on that one. One of the quirks of this, it kind of harkens back to one of the things I mentioned earlier, is you're essentially joining our contract. So my guess is that MemberClicks is going to be really liberal about bringing people on that already have a MemberClicks contract. But it's really going to be a partnership in that case between MemberClicks, the state and regional, and us to be able to sort that out. So if you're in that situation, just let us know. We can start that conversation.
All right, thank you. And our next question is from Mike Burke. I'd like to ask for a transitional period that reflects the less frequent and asynchronous planning period relative to ACRAO that our regional association follows. And this is, I assume, New England ACRAO. It could take us a year to make these requirements happen, but we don't want to immediately lose our current level of connection, e.g. no longer promoting our regional reception at the ACRAO annual conference and so on. This program is new to our association, and we need time to react, discuss, vote, plan, update bylaws, and so on.
Yes, and that is absolutely the way it's going to be. I actually, right before we went onto the call, when Jerry, Mike, and I were talking about the webinar, one of the things that I mentioned from the rollout and the next steps is, I think there's, if we've got 50 state and regional organizations that we're affiliated with, I think there'll be 25 or 30 that were on this call or have heard us do something before that are ready to go and moving along. I think there will realistically 6 or 8 months from now, when Jerry sends out an email to folks asking them who do they want to have come to their meeting next year, some of them will have not paid any attention to this conversation at all and will be starting from scratch. So we absolutely believe that there will be a period of time where we're really getting everybody on board. We know that it's going to take the state and regional groups a while to talk through this and figure out what it means for them, decide which level they want, things like that. So this isn't going to be a case where we cut off any of the benefits. We're really operating kind of status quo for a while. The ones that will be a difference that I will call out is the groups that are on the pilot right now. We are hoping that they make a decision fairly soon, because again, we want to be able to transition them to the contract for MemberClicks. So we're basically supporting the way we would support them going forward for MemberClicks. And then we wouldn't turn on MemberClicks for anybody new until they signed up with one or the other affiliation. So, but everything else, all of the other things that we've been doing for you or that have been part of our relationship, we'll continue to do until we kind of get everybody on board.
If I could add from the back seat to the front seat and everything, it's going to be a transition. It's going to be a change, and we're not going to let go of things we've done, things we want to do, and what the future looks like. But I want to also add one more thing. One thing, whether you're a regular partner, an affiliate, a full an agreement and everything, when you bring things to the board, when I hear things from you or Jack or anybody, those things are listened to with the board in its entirety. And any question that you want to bring up to us, myself in this role, or Jack as a president-elect, they are addressed with the board, and it's not going to depend on whether you're a full member or an affiliate member, but just keep that in mind.
Yeah. And just as a follow-up, I know the board has not explicitly made a decision, but do you envision this transition period lasting a full year from leadership, like by June of 2020? Would you say that you'd want people to be ready to commit to one version or the other?
If I had to guess, we'd probably be pretty close by a year from leadership. Again, there may be some. I would argue that it's more a case of what has your connection been with us. So if somebody reaches out to us and says, we're working through this, we're not going to be ready by June 20, just to pick a date, I think that's totally fine. I think it would be more a case of if we heard from somebody, or if we weren't hearing from an organization, I think that would begin to be more concerning. But yeah, I think realistically a year, but it could go beyond that.
All right. And we don't have any other pending questions right now. I guess we can give people a few moments.
Great.
And if anybody wants to raise that hand so they can get on board the audio call, that'd be fun.
And I'll just say, Jerry, I put Jerry and my email address on the slide. As I said before, you're going to get a follow-up email from us tomorrow. So you'll end up having our email for that if you don't already have our email. Again, I think most of the people on the call know us fairly well. So feel free to reach out if you have others. We're trying to be really, really flexible with this and to really know that this is a new model. And it will be one that will take a while to move forward. And realistically, people are going to continue to have questions about what it means and continue to have feedback. So there may very well be things that we need to tweak about this model as we move forward, as we start to sign up with folks. There could be things that we didn't see or that were blind spots for us. So let us know on those as well.
And Mike Burke, your mic should be enabled.
Yep. I really just wanted Mike to be able to unmute somebody. This is Mike Burke from AACRAO. I want to thank you both for and Mike also for the presentation. I do appreciate the consideration around a longer on-ramp, and I think probably a year is what it'll take us to get go through the motions and the legislation and all that stuff. But you know, I see the benefits and I appreciate it.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, and we have, thanks again, Mike. And we have one question from Kathy Wilson. Where did you say we can see these contracts for the different membership levels? And just really quickly, in your webinar dashboard, there should be below the questions a handouts tab. And in there is a PDF which contains the state and regional relationships. But I can also, if you can't find that there, I'll in that follow-up email to everyone that was on here, you'll receive a version of that contract, which also includes places where you can digitally sign if you so choose. So you'll receive that pretty quickly. And then Lane, well, Lisa, let's see here. Lisa Cota says this was helpful. Well, thank you, Lisa. Thanks for joining. And then Lane Chapman says the support is going to be incredibly helpful for our organization. I'm looking forward to sharing details with our state and executive committee at our next meeting next month. So
yeah, and I'll put one again with my former VP of Finance hat on. You know, I'll put one more plug in. You know, one of the things that we said a couple of years ago from the board standpoint, and especially from the budget standpoint, was that the goal of doing something like buying a building and the goal of having a really stable operating budget for the organization was to ultimately be able to put more investment back into the membership of ACRAO. So to be able to provide more resources, provide more training, provide more information. And this really ends up being part of it. We really identified early on in that process that there's so many people that ACRAO only reaches through the state and regional. So they never come to the ACRAO meeting. They may only go to the website a couple of times a year, but they hear from you all the time, and they attend your annual meeting every single year, and they attend your workshops a couple of times a year. So us being able to provide outreach for that group of people and to be able to start providing support for them and for the groups that are supporting them is really phenomenal. And I think, again, a great way for ACRAO to make an investment back into its membership. So, thank you, everyone.
Yeah, and then, I was just going to say, Joe was echoing Mike's appreciation of the transition period because he envisions a membership, this is Joe Papari, envisions a membership vote needing to happen in order to approve the structural changes needed. So I think that'll be it. So yeah, now you can do your thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
Great job, Jack. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good weekend.
All right. Thanks for joining, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.